both from the previous lesson as well as the exchange rate and the currencies. Over to you.
Okay, thank you again, Tatepowe. Learners, colleagues, and everyone who's listening, parents, I'm grateful for this opportunity once more to come to you and present the last and final topic for me on finance right now. I'll be changing next week, talking about the measurements. But now for finance, I want us to go back to grade 10 work again, where we talked about the rates and ratios. Remember, those are the basic skills that you require in order for you to answer most questions in mathematical literacy. So it's very important that I go back and revisit those topics. Now, if you remember the rates and ratios, now, currently, for one, I will encourage each and every learner to use these different methods, because this is what I use currently with my learners, and it has been working wonders for me. Now, I will just start with the rate and ratio. Remember, these two are the same. Basically, the only difference between the rate and ratio is that the rate has the units, but the ratio does not have units. Now, I'll to go to the point where we should talk about the exchange rate, but only if we understand these two basic skills. Now, what I usually encourage learners is that ratio is all about one. So if we have one, what do we mean all about one? Now, what do I mean all about one? One as a number. That means anything in a ratio. If you can get one, it will be simpler for you to answer any question on ratio. I know sometimes it may be in the simplest form, sometimes it may be in a simplest ratio. But now I want us to concentrate on one, the number one. Now, the rules about one, the first one is that when I move from one, which is the number one, then I will always multiply. Always multiply. That's why I encourage one. Then I know when I'm going to multiply. Secondly, when I move towards one. So that means it's when we move from one or when we move towards one. Then when we move towards one, then I always divide. Now let's make an example, the simplest example in our school scenario. Remember that in most of the cases, one table takes two chairs. I think it's a common understanding for each and every one of us. Even the parents, they know that even in their home we use tables and chairs. But in their home it's one table, 4 chairs. But now I like us to start with this one. One table, 2 chairs. Now, if it happens that in the school that we buy 18 chairs, how many tables will we require? So mathematically, I want us to calculate that. So they say if we have 8 chairs, so that means that 8, it will go under the chair. That means it will go under 2. Now, if you check now, under 2 now we'll have 2 numbers, but under 1 we'll have 1 number. So that means I have to find the second number under 1 that will match the 8 chairs. So what do we mean? Now look at that. That means I will have to move from chairs going to tables. And my 1 is in the side of tables. That means I'm moving towards 1. So if I move towards 1, I take that 8. Then the other number of the ratio, which is 2, it will tell me that I divide or multiply with that number. But because we are moving towards 1, that means we are going to divide by what? By 2. So that means I'll need 4 tables. Now let's make another example with 1 chair into 1 table, 4 chairs. So what will happen if I had 17 tables? How many chairs will I require for 17 household? Sorry. Now I'll put 17 under the table because they said I have 17 tables. So that means 17 this time it will be under 1. So under 1 I'll have 2 numbers. But under the second number, which is 4, which is chairs again, it will only be 1 number. That means I am required to look for another number under the chairs, which will make for 17 chairs, into tables. Now that means I'll move in from one to the other side. So that means if I move from one, according to those two rules, if I move from one, I multiply. Now I will say 17 multiply by what? The number there on to the one tells us we move to or from. The other numbers tell us that we are multiplying or dividing that. So that means 4 will say multiply by 4. Then we take our calculator, which is, we press 17, multiply that by 4. That means we'll be required to have 68 chairs. Now remember that, learners, it's not about the direction, it's about 1. Whether 1 is on the other side. Let's make the last example on this one. If I have 16 learners at school, then I require 1 teacher. Do you see now in this example, I changed this side of 1, but remember it's about 1. Whether we move from 1 or towards 1 is not about when we move from left or right. Now, if I have 32 learners, how many educators or teachers will I need? That means 32 is learners. We're going to put 32 under learners. So if there's 32 is under learners, which is 16 is represented by the number 16. So that means in the side of 16, I have 2 numbers. In the side of 1, I have 1 number. So that means I'll have to move towards 1 to find the second number on my right hand side. So that means I'll move towards 1. In my rules, I said if I move towards 1, I always divide. So that means it's 32 divide. Then what must I divide? 1 tells us whether we multiply or divide. The other number, which is 16, that means we are going to divide by 16. So 32 divided by 16, it will be 2 teachers. That means I'll require 2 teachers. That is basically what I was hoping us to get. Now, basically the same as rates. Rates is like what we are usually use to buy at the shop. For example, if I buy 1 liter of a milk, how much will it cost? So eventually they will say 10 rand 50 cents per liter. Per means 1. So if you see 1, you can write that those things as ratio. So according to me, I'll write 10 rand 50, then the sign of a ratio for 1 liter, because they said per liter for 1 liter. So that means now I have my 1, but my 1 this time has units. So wherever side that I'm going to go, that means if I move towards 1, I'll get liters. If I move away from 1, I'll get rands. So basically that's what you are talking about. So if I buy 6 liters of milk, how much would it cost? Because they talk about liters, we have 10 rand 50 for 1 liter. So 6 liters, I'll put it under 1 liter. So that liters under liters. Now, under liters, I have 2 digits. So that means I must go to my left hand side of rands. That means I'm moving away from 1 because 1 is on the other side. So if I move away, I said we multiply. So it will be 10 into 6 multiplied by 1050. So 6 multiplied by 10 rand 50, which is 63 rand. That means it will cost me, because I'm moving to the other side of, not to that one of 1, but the other side. That means it will take the rent. It will be 63 rand. And remember that, learners, rents are not, R63 is not a rent. It's a road. So we must write some of mathematical, especially finance. We have to write it correctly. 63 rand is R63,00. Always money we rounded it to 2 decimal place in our final answer. So remember to put those ,00 just to show that you are talking about money, you understand what you are talking about. Now, so basically rate and ratio are one and the same thing. Even the petrol, for now, I saw that when I poured the petrol, I paid 13 rand 95 cents for 1 liter. So 13 rand 95 cents for 1 liter. Now, I paid 500 rand. I said, petrol to the petrol attendant, I want the petrol for 500. So I need to know for 500, how many liters will I have? So that means 500, I'll put it, because it's money, I'll put it under the rents, which is under 13 rents. So that means I'm looking for number of liters. That means I'm moving towards 1. Immediately I move towards 1, according to those two rules, towards, I always divide. That means I'll say 500 divided by 13 rand 95 cents. So 500, we punch that 500 divided by 13 rand 95 cents. Then it gives me 13.842222. So 35.84229391. Remember, these are liters, because the side of 1, I was moving towards 1, the side of 1 is, these are liters. Now I can round off my answer, which is approximately 35.84 liters. Remember, this one is when it's stated otherwise, but until we round up to 2 decimal places unless stated otherwise. Now, let's get to the business of today. The business of today, the exchange rates between different countries. Remember those rules that I've talked about. Now, let's understand why do we need to convert from one currency to another currency. Remember that our currencies from different countries, they differ from one country to another. The more country has more economy, the more is developed, the more the currency becomes expensive. Now we are comparing this currency. It can never be equal. This currency we have to compare from one country to another. In most of the cases, like in South Africa, we usually compare the rands to a dollar, but doesn't mean the only currency is a dollar. There are Namibian dollars, there are Zim dollars, there are Botswana pula, and so forth. There are so many currencies, so there are euros, so we need to compare our own currency to another currencies. But it doesn't mean we cannot compare other currencies of different countries except our own. But the currency tells us how powerful is the buying power of that currency in that country, in another country. So that means the lesser you pay for another currency, the stronger your currency. The more you pay for another different currency, the weaker your currency. That means we are saying that your buying powers are becoming lesser and lesser if you pay more. But if you pay less, your buying power becoming more and more. So that's why we need to understand the currencies of the different countries. Now, for example, if I need $1 of America, $1, $1 US, in this morning I saw that US dollar, it costs 18 rand 35 cents this morning. I don't know now, because remember the currency changes from time to time. It doesn't change from day to day. It can change every second, every minute. It can change. That's why we need to compare depending on what's happening to different countries. Now, $1, that means if you are South African and you go to America, you need to use American currency, which is dollars. Now, to you to be able to have $1, this is what it means. For you to be able to have $1, you must at least have 18 rand 35 cents in South African currency. So that means US dollar is more powerful than South African rand. That means our buying power in America, it's weaker. But the American dollar, if they can come here, their buying power is much stronger than the rand, because it's expensive itself. So $1 is 18 rand 35 cents. That means if you live here and go to America and you have 20,000 rand, you have 20,000 rand. Now in America, how much are you actually have? Because it's not the same as amount as in South Africa. So remember that we have $1. Now remember that principle of moving away from one and moving towards one. Now we are giving the rands. We are putting the rands under the rand, which for now is on my right hand side, which is 20,000. 20,000 have 4 zeros. Now that means I'll need to know how many dollars do I have in America. That means I'm moving towards one. So if I move towards one, what you require is that 20,000, I need to divide it, because when we move towards, we are dividing. We divide by 18 rand 35 cents, because we set the other into units. They tell us whether we divide by 8 or multiply by 8. So we go and punch that in the calculator. 20,000 divided by 18 rand 35 cents. Now it gives me $1,089.92. So $1,089, 1,089, not 20,000 anymore. That means when you're in America, you don't have 20,000, but you have $1,089.92. Now, so basically what we are saying is that if we go to America, you don't have too much to buy with. You have less to buy with. That's why we're saying the buying power of rent in America is less. Now, for another example, I'll go to question paper of last year that was written by matriculants of last year at the end of the year. Now, question 2 of it, it was paper 2, question of 2 of it. Now, 2.3, John's daughter, Megan, works in Denmark. That means she's not working in her own country. She's working in a different country. She earns an annual gross salary of KR, which is Danish kroner. KR stands for Danish kroner. It's a currency for Denmark. It's not the currency for South Africa, which is 600,000 Danish kroner. She informed her father that she had the following annual deduction from her salary. Now they have their annual deduction. That means for every employer there will be deductions now and then. 229,760 Korean Danish for investing policy. 48,000 Danish Korean labor market contribution. 37,200 Danish Korean for employment deduction. Those are the only 3 reductions that Megan has on at Denmark. Now, use the information above to answer the question that follow. 2.3.1, calculate in rents. That means this Megan is a South African. Before even they can tell you, because the currency that we use in South Africa is rent. So we know from there that she's a South African. Megan's annual gross salary using the following exchange rate. Now they gave you the exchange rate. Now we have €1 equals to 15.64, 16 rand 64 cent in South Africa. Now again we have €1, which is 7.47 Danish kroner. Now Danish kroner, we want then how much in rands does Megan have? Now that means we need to compare South Africa with Danish. Now most of the learners, they will say 1:1. Those are mathematical learners, but in mathematical literacy we go step by step. Don't punish yourself about something you don't know. Now I have Danish Korean. In these 2 exchange rates, I'll want the one that has Danish Korean first. Now, which is the second one? It has Danish Korean because it's earning 600 Danish Korean. So the second one, it says €1 is 7.47 Danish Korean. Now, I have 600 Danish Korean. That means under Danish Korean, I'm going to put 600,000 Danish Korean. So if I have under Danish Korean, that means I need to find how many euros first before I can go to rent. Oh, that means I'm going towards 1. That principle, if you go towards 1, we always divide. So if I go towards 1, I will divide 600 divided by 7.47. And the answer that we get is euros, not rents. So 600,000 divided by 7.47. Then I'll have 80,321.28514 euros. Remember that we don't round off before we get to the final answer. This is a euro, is not the rent. We don't round off because the question says how much in rands. So now I have euros, then I have the exchange rate. Let's talk about the euros and the South African rand. So that I means I'm going to use the second ratio, which is 1 euro is 15 rand 65 cent in South Africa. Then I have 80,321, 2851 for euros. Now this time I'll be moving towards 1. So if I move towards 1, what do? I multiply that by 15 rand 65 cents. The principle is still the same. So now multiply by 15 rand 65 cents. 80,321, 28514 multiply by 15 rand 65 cents. Now this is rands. Now we can round off the final answer. I get 101,257,028,112 because it's money and it's a final answer. It must be two decimal place. Two decimal place, it will be 1,257,028 cents. So that means in South Africa, Megan earns 1,257,000 rand and 28 rand 11 cents. Now 2.3.2. John stated that Megan's total annual deduction, excluding tax, are more than 52% of her annual gross salary. Now that means all deduction excluding tax, they are more than 52%. We need to prove that the deduction, is it 52% or less, or 52% or more. So that means we need to find the total deductions first. How much is it? Now the total deductions, remember, is 229,760 Korean dollars plus 48,000 plus 37,200. These are Korean into Danish, Korean, all of them. So we add first 229,760 plus 48,000 plus 37,200. Now we get 314,960 Danish Korean. Now this is the total deduction. So her annual gross salary, remember, is 600,000. So now we want to know how much percentage is this to her annual salary. So we take the answer that we just got, which is 314,960. We divide this by 600,000. Then, because we are looking for percentage, if we are looking for percentage, we always multiply the fraction with 100. Now I punch the calculator, 314,960 divided by 600,000. Then I multiply that by 100. Then I'll get 52,493333. So, which is approximately 52,49%. Now, is 52,49% above 52%? That's correct. It's more than that. That means Megan is correct. Remember to write that final conclusion. Megan is correct. This is the final conclusion, so that you get your full marks on that question. Now, I don't know that if we have any questions before I continue further than that. That means I can continue. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Now, another example that I'm going to take is from the same question paper, which is 2.4. Now, table 1 on an exercise show the marginal tax rate for individual. Remember yesterday we dealt with the taxation. Remember that taxation is not only applied in South African currency, it's also applied in different currencies. I'll advise you, these learners, the same way that we apply the rules of taxation is the same way for any currency. What you need to do, only round off the money to the currency that is being needed. So that means if Megan wanted to know how much she's paying for this currency in South Africa, how much she's paying for tax. We can calculate Megan annual salary, excluding the pension fund, as we said previously, excluding pension funds. After taking out the pension fund, we can use the South African tax table. But if they have the Korean, the Danish Korean table there, then it's fine, you can use it. Remember that the currency, use the currency that is being given. It's either you convert into that currency or you leave your currency, then only convert the final answer to the currency that is being needed according to the text table that will be given. Now, this one, table 1 on extra D, shows the top marginal tax rate for individual in the G20 countries. This table provides the presence and the past data of the top marginal tax rate. It was updated in January 2019. That means that's why this question paper was asked last year. Now 2.4.1, use the information in annexure D. Now let me take out the annexure D and read it out. The annexure D is on page 5 of last year's addendum. Is question 2.4, table 1, top marginal tax rate for individual in the G20 countries. G20 countries that we have is Japan, Netherlands, Germany, Australia, China, France, South Africa is one of them, Spain, United Kingdoms, Italy, South Korea, Swaziland, United States of America, India, Argentina, Mexico, Turkey, Canada, Indonesia, Brazil, Singapore, Russia, and South Arabia. Now we are given the unit percentages, the 2019 and the previous one of this text table. Now, the question now will say 241. Name the country that has the biggest range between 2019 and the past top marginal tax rate. Remember that if we talk about the range, the probability, which of us will deal with the probability later on during the presentation, later on the other presentation. Probability, when it says the range, we are talking about the bigger value subtract the smaller value. It doesn't matter whether the smaller value it has a negative sign or not. The way we calculate that minus is for calculating the range. Then the sign there of minus there on the other to the smallest value, that means if we have minus and minus, that means we are going to add the two values. But in this case, in this data, we don't have that one. So that means we are going to subtract the data for all the countries. So for Japan, if I subtract the range, it will be 0 because it's 55.95 and 55.95. So that means the range there is 0. Now for Netherlands, it's 52.00 and 52. Remember that if the number is only a whole number and it does have the decimal, remember it has the decimal, it's just that after decimal is zeros. If you put 52.00 in the calculator and punch it and say equals to, it will give you straight 52 because the zeros, the calculator doesn't show it. So that means for Netherlands also it's 0. 52.00 and 52, they're the same because after decimal is 00. So it's 0. Then we have Germany, which is 47.50, and the previous is 47.5. So also for those two, because the first digit after the comma, that's why we say the number after the comma is digit. Only in finance that we say those is 50. But in any other form, we say it's their digits. It's 50, it's not 50, it's 50. So the other one is 47.5. So because it's not money, it's 47.50 also. So also for Germany, it's 0. Then Australia, 45 and 45 is 0. For China, it's 45.00 and 45 also, as I've said, it's 0. France is 0. South Africa is 0. Spain is 0. United Kingdom is 0. Italy is 0. South Korea is 0. Swaziland is 0. United States of America is 37.00 and 39.6. That means we can find the difference there because it's not 0. 39.6 minus 37.00, it gives me 2.6. This is the first country that I guess the difference into the different range. The others is 0. Now again, India is 35.88 and 35.54. So that means because on the top one I started with the previous, even this one I'll start with the previous, which is 35.54 minus 35.88. In this case, I don't start with the big minus small because the top one I started with the previous one. So this one I'll start also with the previous one. Then there is negative 0.34. Argentina is 0. Mexico is 0. Turkey is 0. Canada is 0. Indonesia is 0. Brazil is 0. Singapore is 0. Russia is 0. And Saudi Arabia is 0. There are only 2 countries that has the range that is not 0. So the question says which country, to name the country that has the biggest range. Now, that means it's between United States of America and India. India has negative range. So negative numbers, we know it's less. So that means the answer there for 2.41, it will be United States of America. Determine the 3 decimal places, the probability of randomly selecting one of the G20 countries where the latest tax range changed from the previous tax range. Now, I rather deal with this probability because in this question, it's always into also asking about probability. Now, when you answer probability, remember that you need to understand what is probability. Now, I'm going to give you only probability in only one event. Remember, probability, we can have one and more than one event. In this case, I'll just highlight you with only one event. But basically, they're the same. It's just that one, it has more than one event. So probability, that means in one event, we say probability is the required event divided by the total event. So for example, if we have a coin is only one event. So if I flip a coin has 2 total outcomes. There I was supposed to say the total outcome, not total event, the total outcomes. The required outcome, if I say it's a head, if I need a head, so the required event is head, which is 1, over the total event, which is 2. So that means the probability there is 1 over 2 as a fraction. We can be also asked probability as a decimal. As a decimal, we just put that fraction on a calculator. It will give us 1 divided by 2, which is 0.5. As a fraction is 0.5. As a percentage, we just multiply the fraction or the decimal by 100, because we said every time when you look for percentage, we must make sure that we multiply by 100. That means it would be 50%. That means probability you can express it as many as possible, as a fraction, as a decimal, as a percentage, and lastly, as a likelihood. Remember, as a likelihood, we need to check our percentage or decimal. If it's a percentage, it will be between 0 and 100. So any number percentage between 0 and 50. That means 0, it's never, that means that event will never happen. It's impossible for it to happen. That's why we say 0. So 0% you say it will never happen. But if it's between 0 and 50, we say it's unlikely for it to happen. The chances of it happening is unlikely. But if it's 50%, we say we have equal opportunities. It may happen, it may not happen. It's even or it's equal chances that it may happen. If it's between 50 and 100%, we say they are likely. That means it's more possible that you may get that outcome. The chances are more likely for you to get it. Is it between 50 and 100? If it's 100, that means we are saying we are certain it will happen. It will happen definitely like that. So that means if we predict that any probability as a likelihood, then we need to look at our that. We say it's impossible. Secondly, it's unlikely, even, and unlikely, then it is certain. It's only 5 out into likelihoods that we might have there. So in this question, they say 3 decimal place the probability randomly selected one of the G countries where the last tax rate exchange from the previous into where the into latest tax rates where the latest, that means the same as that one. Remember those one that we got 0 from that. It's 18 countries. It's only those 2 that were different. So that means only 18 countries. Probability it will be 18 because we identified only 2 that did not have the same as the latest one. So that means it's 18 countries out of all the countries that that's what we are talking about, the total outcomes out of 20. So it's 18 out of 20. Remember that if you write as a fraction, in this case they didn't say give probability as a fraction, they just say give the probability. If you write it as a fraction, you write it as into a simplified fraction. That means it's simple, you just punch it in the calculator, 18 over 20 in the calculator, it will give you, which is 9 out of 10. Simple as ABC. Now, for probability, I'll just end there because today's session is not about probability. It's exchange rate between different countries. But it shows that the exchange rate can differ from one point to another. Now, if there are no further questions, I'd like us to go back to exchange rate, to exchanging the rate of this, was that Megan. Another question that can be added on Megan's tax on to in South Africa because she's working in Denmark. Now remember that her annual salary is 600,000. Now the only thing that we said, for us to get the taxable income, that's what's important. For us to get the taxable income, we need to take out the pension fund. According to Dennis Mark, the pension fund is employment deduction. So that means you're only going to take out the employment deduction. Remember that 600,000 is already in annual. You don't need to multiply by 12 or 13. They didn't say anything, mention anything about, they didn't mention anything about the, what do you call, the pension, what is that, medical aid. So you don't need to separate the medical aid. All we need to do is to subtract them into the pension fund. Remember, we already converted the 600,000 in the previous question, the 600,000 to South African rand, and we got that 1,257,028 rand 11 cents. This is how much she earns in South Africa. Now we need to take out the pension fund of 37,000 to 37,000 according to Danish Korean. The 7,200, we need to round it also to South African rents. So if you take the 7,200, remember that we divide that first by, we take it to the euro, we divide by 7,47. We punch in the calculator that 7,200 divided by 7,47, we get 4,979,919,676. Then we multiply that by 15 rand 65 cents to take to South African rand. Multiply by 15 rand 65 cents. Now that means her pension fund in South Africa is 77,935 rand and 74 cents. Then we subtract from 1,257,028 rand 11 cents. We subtract 77,935 rand and 74 cents. So subtract 77,935 rand and 34 cents. Then we get 1,179,092 rand 367. Remember, this is not the final answer. We need to calculate her tax per month. This is annual into taxable income. 1,179,092 rand to 92 rand, 367. Now, what is a taxable income? We go and identify the tax table. According to this tax table, the first one, it says, remember, this is the last year tax table. It's not the same as the previous one that I used yesterday. 0 to 195,000, we need 1 million, so that is not it. 195 to 300 is not it. 305,000 to 423 is not it. 423 to 555. Now we are going to go to the second last one, which is 708,000 to 1,500,000. This is 1,100,000. That means this is the tax bracket that we'll be using. So in that tax bracket is 207,448 rand plus 41% of taxable income amount above 708,310. So remember, we write it as it is, then we substitute 41% of, we said it's a bracket, taxable income in South African rand. It's 1,179,092 rand 3,367 minus 708,310. So we put that in the calculator. 1,179,092,367 minus 708,310. Then we get 470,782,367. Then we multiply by 41% to remove the bracket, which is 193,020,7705. Then we add 207,448. Then we get 400,468,7705. They didn't tell us into Megan's age, so we're only going to subtract the primary build, which is 11,000 to 14,067. So minus 14,067, then it will give us 386,041,7705. Because they said they want the monthly tax divide by 12, because they didn't talk about anything about the 13th check. So we'll have the monthly tax for Megan, it will be 32,215 cents if you calculate correctly. This is all that I have today in Tatepowe. So if I have questions, I still have 5 more minutes, then I'll just go through quickly with that question if there are questions.
And the first question is just saying that could you please repeat 2.3.1?
From which question paper? The question paper that I just did.
One.
Okay, 2.3.1 offer. They say calculate in rand Megan's annual gross salary using the following exchange rate, which is €1 is 15 rand and 64 cents in South Africa. And again, we are given €1 equals to 7,47 Danish kroner. Now we want her annual gross salary. Remember, in our statement they said that she earns an annual gross salary. We are already given that. We don't need to calculate that. Her annual salary of 600,000 Danish kroner. So that means we need to convert that Danish kroner into 2 rands. But the 2 exchange rates, there's no way they compare the rands with the Danish kroner. So what we need to do, we need to look for the one that has the Danish kroner first, which is the second one of the exchange rate. So the second one says €1 is 7,47 Danish kroner. So that means I'm going to put 600,000 Danish kroner under Danish kroner. The principle of moving towards one and moving away from one. So that means from Danish kroner, I'll be moving towards one. If I move towards one, that means I will simply divide. Divide what? 600. I'm going to divide it by what? By 7,47. So I take my calculator, 600,000, 245, divide by 7,47. then I'll get 80,321,28514. Remember that this exchange rate says it's euro. It's from Danish to euro. It's not to rand. So that 80,321,28514, it's euros. And I don't round it off because I'm not at the final answer. So that means I need to convert to what? To rand. Now I have the second rate that I'm giving. 1 euro is 15 rand 64 cents. Now I have euros that I just calculated. Then I can go to rand, which is the question that is basically asked. 80,321,28514. Now I'm going away from 1. If I go away from 1, what I do? I multiply. I always multiply by what? By 15 rand 65 cents. So if I multiply by 15 rand 65 is going to give me 1,256,224 rand and 90 cents. This is what they wanted us to use to calculate a monthly tax per annum. So this is how we are supposed to do that. First thing, we divided by 7 rand 47 cent. Second, we multiply by 15 rand 64 cent, the answer that we receive.
And then the other question just says that, Matitoane, could you please just also explain the rates examples you made? That is the last question for the day. Please just explain the rates example that you made.
Okay, thank you. Now, remember that I said rate and ratio, the principle of applying the rate and ratio are the same. All you need to do is to grasp the principle. The principle that I did is that for both rate and ratio, the only difference between rate and ratio is that the rates have the units, the ratio does not have the units. So the principle that we are going to apply for both is basically the same. Now, I made the example of the ratio because the simplest one that we use at home, where we say 1 table is to that. Remember that 1 is the basic rule for both rate and ratio. It's all about 1. 1 is going to tell us whether we multiply or divide 1 in the ratio. That's why the question every time it will keep on asking us, find the ratio in the simplest form, or find the ratio in the form 1:2. Because they know that if you have 1, it's either you know that if I move from 1, I'm going to multiply. If I move towards 1, I'm going to divide. That's the principle. Moving from 1, whether 1 is on the right or on the left, you must know that if I move away from 1, I'm going to multiply. If I move towards 1, I'm going to divide. Now, that's the principle of the ratios. But if I take it to the rates, the only difference that is the units. But the principle of 1 applies. 1 liter of milk is 10 rand 50. I still have 1, but my the only difference is that it has liters. Then I have the other number, which is 1050, which is in rands. That means the question will ask you to find the liters or the rands. So I'm still going to move towards 1 or away from 1. So if I'm given 5 liters and I want to know how much it costs, that means I'm going to put liters under liters, but liters represent the 1. That means I'll move away from 1. I'm going to do what? Multiply. The principle is easy. It's about 1. If I move away from 1, I multiply. If I move towards 1, I divide. Simple as ABC.
Matitoane, thank you so very much for that Maths Lit lesson that we had today. And there are no further questions. However, there's just a commendation, just saying that Matitoane, thank you so very much for your ever insightful Maths Lit lessons. We're definitely gaining and learning a lot from you.
Much appreciated, and I'm also always willing to give out the information as much as possible. That way, I think you will give out the question paper again to the learners just to go through it. Then in the next session, we'll answer more questions if there are any.
Thank you so very much, Matitoane. See you again on the next lesson next week.
Thank you very much. See you on Monday.